We could scrap that.
Okay, I'm fine scrapping that for time. You know how
Okay.
I always want shorter shows.
Yeah. Welcome back to the D3 Datacast. We're back from our holiday break, and today marks the return to our normal schedule, publishing an episode every Monday morning, and we will continue to do so all the way through to Fort Wayne. So we are back in action. Next stop, Fort Wayne. Here we go, Matt. And we actually have a pretty busy show planned here. We're going to be going region by region, all 10 regions, using the NCAA criteria to lay out who we believe currently, based on the season to date, to be the top three in each region. So, Matt, you want to give us a more full introduction there to our topic, and we will get right into it because there is a lot to cover.
Yeah, so there are 10 regions in Division 3. This is the way that the NCAA breaks up the country. Next month in February, in the middle of the month, they'll start releasing their regional rankings, and it'll be about 7 teams per region that will be ranked. And this is kind of in the lead up to the tournament selections. This is the process that the national committee goes through with input from the regional committees in their selection, their seeding, their host determinations for each of the 10 regions. So if you're new to Division 3, this is going to be a little bit of a preview of the process, but we're going to go region 1 through 10, and we're going to take a look at who's at the top of the region. So who I think is the top 3 in each of those regions right now. Some of the regions are pretty clear. Some of the regions are less clear, but we're going to go through those. We're going to talk about the primary criteria. We've had an episode earlier in the year called How to Make the NCAA Tournament, where we went through some of this, but we're going to be using kind of some of those ideas in putting together these top three teams in each region today. So if you are ready, we will jump over into the topic.
Let's get into it.
So a little bit of kind of the criteria, what we're doing here. Like I said, top 3 teams in each of the 10 regions. It's based on our implementation of the NCAA's criteria. So they say there are 5 primary criteria. They spell that out in the pre-championship handbook. It is winning percentage, strength of schedule. That's the NCAA's defined strength of schedule. Results versus regionally ranked opponents, head-to-head results, and results versus common opponents. Those are the 5 criteria. We're going to kind of try to use those to say who's the top 3 in each region. Winning percentage and strength of schedule data is complete through January 7. We're recording a little bit early on Sunday, January 8, so I don't have all of the data complete. This episode will go out on January 9, but there weren't a ton of Sunday games this week, so I don't think it will affect very much. That's kind of what the data is. And I want to give a major shout out to Drew Pasteur at D3Bubble on Twitter. If you do not follow him, please give a follow. He runs data similar to what I do for this regionally ranking type stuff, Pool C, bubble types of things. I use his data all the time to check mine, to complement mine, to supplement mine. So a lot of the stuff that I'm putting here is a combination of the data that I run, which will be in the description below, and data that Drew runs. We'll also link to his Twitter account. He posts a lot of great data on his Twitter account, so couldn't do the stuff that I do without Drew. So I wanted to say thank you to him for sure.
Yeah, and just before we get into it, we gotta note there's a big difference between something like this and a top 25 that has no objective criteria. So, hey, maybe this isn't exactly how each regional committee would put together the list right now, but we're doing this based on the defined NCAA criteria. So any disagreements that may be out there as you're watching the episode, feel free to disagree, but remember it needs to be a criteria-based argument for why you might see something in a different light here.
And that really messes with my mind this time of the year. I'm a top 25 voter. I run the efficiency ratings. We've talked about efficiency ratings in previous shows a lot. But when you shift gears to the NCAA's criteria, all of a sudden someone who's maybe 50th, not even in your fringe top 25 consideration, they could be in position to receive a host by the NCAA based on the criteria. So it's a really big mind shift that you have to get into. It's not a top 25. This is the NCAA's implementation of their own criteria. They're doing some similar things, but it's a completely different ball game. Yeah. So if you want to gripe with my list here, which is totally fair, I griped with it myself putting it together. We got to look at it by the criteria. So with that, you ready to jump into Region 1, Zach?
No better place to start than Region 1.
Sounds like he's ready. So Region 1, this is part of the old Northeast region, if you remember the old systems. the old system of regionally rankings when we had 8 regions. Excuse me. And you can see on the screen, I'm kind of listing the general region or the conferences that are in this region: the GNAC, the MASCAC, the NAC, the NESCAC. I probably won't call those out for every region, but you can see there what part of the country we're kind of talking about here. So Region 1 to me was a fairly clear region. I came out with St. Joseph, then Williams, then Trinity. St. Joseph is currently, one of the top 1 or 2 teams in the country as far as the top 25 standpoint, but they're also coming out very well by the criteria. They've won all their games. Their strength of schedule right now is surprising to me at a .513 based on how strong their kind of non-conference schedule was. But they're starting to get into GNAC play. There's a lot of weaker teams in that conference. They're by far and away the best team in that conference. So it's been pulling their SOS down. But I think by the end of the season, they'll still be okay there. It's just going to be something for them to kind of watch. I still have them on top of this region. And as far as regionally ranked wins, I think they have 4 right now. And those teams are, looking at my notes here, WPI and Tufts for sure, I think, are regionally ranked right now. UW Oshkosh and Babson are looking good. And they actually have a win against Illinois Wesleyan. I didn't count for them, but I probably should have. I think I counted for some teams later on. I think Illinois Wesleyan might still be hanging on to the 7th spot in their region. So maybe as many as 5 regionally ranked wins for St. Joseph, which is going to look very good at the end of the year. I think based on fewer ranked teams per region this year than last year. So 5, I don't think they'll have a chance to get any more than that based on playing in the GNAC, but 5 is going to look pretty good. Next, Williams. They took their first loss this week to Amherst. They're a candidate to host. Oh, I should have said St. Joseph, Connecticut, probably looking good to host a first and second round pod, sending 4 teams there. They might be in a position to get kind of like a top 4 overall seed. And what that means in Division 3 is you could be maybe in position to host the second weekend as well. So kind of like Sweet 16, Elite 8, sectional round as well. St. Joseph could be in a position for that. Williams in a hosting position as well. I think they could maybe be in that top 4 conversation as well, or they could get themselves back into that top 4 conversation. And then Trinity, I'm designating them as the Pool A for the NESCAC right now. I think it's only 1-0 maybe. Not exactly sure. But they don't have a slam dunk regionally ranked win at this point. They've beaten Nichols, Farmingdale State, and Colby. All of those could end up ranked, or maybe none of those could end up ranked. It could be 0 or it could be 3. I kind of designated them as 1.5. I also designated Williams as 1.5. RPI, Williams has beaten, looks ranked, and they've also beaten Wesleyan, who maybe is holding on to like a number 7 spot in this region. So I kind of put a 0.5 there. That may go either way. So that's kind of what Region 1 looks like right now. It's going to be NESCAC heavy in this region, particularly after St. Joseph. But I think Williams and Trinity look good there. Maybe Tufts, if we're looking at a 4th team, probably Tufts is next out of that region.
This is going to be a fascinating region to watch as we get into regional ranking season and see how the NCAA handles this, because like you mentioned, for St. Joseph, it's going to be all about keeping that winning percentage at 100. Really, they don't have a lot of margin of error to be competitive here, because that SOS is going to take a hit as they get further into GNAC play. And like you said, the regional ranked opponents, in NESCAC play, those teams are going to have chances to add to it. Yeah. Playing a GNAC schedule, what St. Joseph has is pretty much done. Now, what they have is really good, perhaps the best in the country, but aside from just taking care of business and keeping their winning streak going, there's really not a lot for them to do. And as a top 25 voter, probably you guys are going to be looking to see, hey, are they beating teams by 20 to 30 points, wanting to see that big margin. But as far as it comes into NCAA consideration, that doesn't mean anything. Everything they have coming out is really going to just hurt them. From the declining strength of schedule, the not adding any more regionally ranked opponent victories or even games played, and all they can do with their winning percentage is go down from here. So it'll be interesting to see how much the NCAA leans on those RROs in maybe looking past what ends up being a marginal to weak strength of schedule, assuming that St. Joseph, Connecticut can keep up that perfect or maybe even near perfect winning percentage.
Yeah, one thing that could maybe ding St. Joseph a little bit, we talked about maybe 5 RROs. You could see Illinois Wesleyan dropping out. UW Oshkosh has been struggling a little bit. They're slipping down the rankings in their region. Tufts is, maybe middle of this region. WPI later on, we will see maybe only in the middle of their region. They played a lot of teams, a lot of good teams, but they actually might not end up with a lot of teams ranked kind of 1, 2, or 3 in the region, which the NCAA committee does look at. Are you playing teams in the top of the region? And they might only have kind of mid-tier regional wins, but still, they're going to have a lot of them. And, I think they're going to be looking good to stay at the top of this region. You could fall number 2 based on someone like Williams, how they compete in the NESCAC, although they've already taken a loss. But yeah, it'll be interesting. Jumping out to region number 2 now. This is also part of the Old Northeast mostly. This is, it's the smallest region. This is going to be the only region that has 6 ranked teams. The other regions will have 7 ranked teams. So something to keep in mind. Won't really play out. We're only looking at 3 here, but this will be the fewest number of ranked teams in region 2. So I think this one is also maybe fairly straightforward based on where the teams line up right now. Keene State looks like the class of this region. Their SOS could be problematic for them, though. They're undefeated, which is great. They really only have the one regionally ranked win, and I think that is Western Connecticut. They had some really impressive wins early in the season. If we remember, they beat Maryville, they beat Marietta. But neither of those teams right now look like they're slam dunks in the region. I think particularly Marietta could get into maybe that top 7 in the Great Lakes, but I don't think they would be right now. They have a win against Emerson. Similarly, here in Region 2, I think they're probably just on the outside of the region. So, maybe as many as 4, but it's probably only one regionally ranked win at this point. I do see Keene State in the hosting mix, but we're going to have to see how that SOS plays out for them as the season progresses. Next, number 2, Brandeis out of the UAA. I think we're going to see a lot of UAA here, both in the top 3s and all across the regional rankings. They're one of the few multi-regional conferences having teams kind of all across the country, so they have the chance to get into a lot of different regions' rankings. Brandeis, I think they're not currently in the hosting mix with their criteria, but you can see it's fairly strong right there with a 572 SOS, and that's probably only going to go up during UAA play, so they're going to end up with a very good SOS, but maybe only regionally ranked win. They've just beat NYU the other day, so that's a big win. They've also played Emerson and Emmanuel, who I think are, as I said, in the Keene State portion, are just maybe outside of the rankings in their region. So maybe 2 wins that flip to regionally ranked, but maybe not as well. And then kind of a surprise for me was number 3 coming up with Western New England in this region. Notably, maybe no WPI that we thought would be here out of the NUMAC. But Western New England looks pretty good. They have a win over Trinity, Connecticut, who we saw in Region 1 in the top 3 of those regions. Their resume is very similar if you look at winning percentage and strength of schedule to WPI, except WPI doesn't really have a regionally ranked slam dunk win, whereas I think that Trinity, Connecticut win is very good. So right now, I think if we had to make a top 3, Western New England would be in, and probably WPI would be 4th in this region.
Yeah, it seems like every year, as we get to pool C time, we're talking about a UAA team with a sub 700 winning percentage that has a sterling strength of schedule, and we'll see what happens. Brandeis currently sitting at the 750, but obviously the meat of that schedule yet to play in the UAA, so we'll have to see if maybe they turn out to be that team. Being in Region 2 may help them because it's a smaller region, they don't have as much to fight through to get ranked like maybe a Case Western Reserve might. So that's something that I'm going to be looking out here in Region 2.
Yeah, for sure. Moving forward to Region 3, I like to think of Region 3 as mostly the old East region. I think there's maybe some Atlantic in there as well. And so right away, we're talking about the UAA again. Number 1 in this region looks like Rochester. They have some good wins. Nazareth, they've beaten, who's number 2 on this list. Middlebury out of the NESCAC, they've beaten. And Worcester out of the NCAC in Region 7, they've beaten. So 3 regionally ranked wins there for Rochester. As I just said, they've beaten Nazareth, so that's going to kind of buoy them up in the rankings here, keeping them ahead of number 2. And I think Rochester looks really good to host as well. They're in that position definitely. Number 2 in this region is Nazareth, 917 winning percentage, 540 strength of schedule. Look really strong. They have wins over Oswego State and Portland, which I'm counting as regionally ranked wins. They've also beaten Alfred, who's probably just on the outside of regional rankings, but that could be one to watch for as well. Those are wins that are already in the bank. And I should clarify, I'm counting wins to this point, not potential future wins. Games that are already in the bank for these teams that they can already count on, or hopefully count on converting into regionally ranked wins once those rankings come out. So Nazareth, I think they're also maybe in the hosting mix. Number 2 in Region 3, I think their criteria is strong, and I think they could find themselves hosting a pod at the end of the year if things all work out. And number 3 in this region is RPI. I think they probably only have one regionally ranked win. They've beaten Western New England, and I don't think they're in the hosting mix right now. Their RROs are going to be probably low. They have one, and I think they might have trouble finding another one in their schedule. So still good, 833 winning percentage, 553 strength of schedule, strong numbers. But I think that they will not host, at least at this point. And if you were looking for a fourth team in this region, maybe Cortland is next up, in my estimation.
Yep, and here I'm just noticing this is the first time we've seen numbers across the board that look solid, and then you also have 3 teams from 3 different conferences. So looking like a stronger top of the rankings here versus what we've seen in the first 2 regions.
Yeah, and I think I haven't really called it out much. I think, when we're talking about the top 3 teams in each region, I think it's likely that all these teams will be in the Pool C mix, maybe not slam dunk Pool C selections. I think in Region 2, Western New England would be maybe bubble-ish right now. But I think you could kind of expect that one of the top 3 teams in each region would be in that kind of Pool C mix. So hopefully we do see a lot of solid resumes across the board as we're talking about these teams here.
Yep, here we've got all 800 plus winning percentages, all 540 and above strength of schedules. So really not a lot to nitpick here with the resumes here so far.
Yep, and still a lot to play. Basically 2 months of play left, month and a half maybe. So a lot of things could happen, but these teams are all sitting fairly well on the Pool C side of things as well. Even the ones I've designated as Pool A's, should they lose that bid, should they not convert that bid, you could be in the Pool C mix as well. Jumping up to Region 4, I think of this as the Old Atlantic region. You can see the conferences there. Top of the list out of the NJAC is Stockton, 846 winning percentage, 610 strength of schedule, very good. I definitely see Stockton as a team in the hosting mix. They could be finding themselves maybe even in like a top 4 mix later on in the season. I think maybe they're not quite there right now, but they could move into that. I think the NJAC is going to be ripe for potential regionally ranked wins and potential for a strength of schedule that stays high. So I think Stockton is looking very strong at this point. I think I see 4 regionally ranked wins already for them. DeSales, Montclair State, Mary Washington, and Widener all I think are in their region's rankings right now. So quite strong from Stockton. DeSales may be next. They have wins over Montclair State and Muhlenberg for 2 regionally ranked wins. I think DeSales is not probably in hosting range right now, so they would probably be off somewhere else if the brackets were released coming up here. But they would be in good position as far as being included in a Pool C kind of Pool C bubble conversation. And then NYU, another UAA team. So I think, 3 regions in a row we've seen a UAA team. 917 winning percentage, 519 strength of schedule. I think they only have the one regionally ranked win at this point. That was a win at Roanoke. So that was a good win. I could listen to an argument that maybe NYU should be 2 and DeSales 3 here. I think that's fine. There's a lot of ways this region could go, and you could definitely nitpick at that one as well. Maybe if you're looking for a 4th team in this region, you could be looking at Rowan. And if you wanted to make arguments about Rowan being even 2 or 3 as well, I think there are arguments to be made there. Rowan has a common opponent win against Stockton, whereas DeSales has lost to Stockton. So that could be, that's another criteria in the mix there that could put Rowan in here. But the way I came up with it, I think I had them 4th, and DeSales just ahead of NYU, but I think those could flip either way.
Yeah, and big seeing an NJAC team at the top there, because once you expand this list out to the 7 that will actually be in a regional ranking, you're probably looking at another 2 NJAC teams.
Yeah, at least 2
getting ranked there. So Very strong conference. They're going to have whoever comes out of there, or even the runner-up, is going to have a chance to build a lot of regionally ranked games played. Um, yeah, someone's going to be building a heck of a resume out of the NJAC, and it actually could be two or three teams.
Yeah, and possibly the very next three teams might be in some order: Rowan, Montclair State, and Kane. So we could have a lot of NJACs in the Region 4 rankings for sure. All right, we're going up ahead to Region 5. This is, I think, largely the old Mid-Atlantic region. You can see the conferences there as well. I think clearly on top of this region for me was Swarthmore. 917 winning percentage, 592 strength of schedule. That's going to be very good. That puts them very well into the hosting mix. Maybe they're going to be in the top 4 mix as well. See how they perform through the remainder of Centennial Conference play. I see 2 or 3 regionally ranked wins for Swarthmore already. They have a win over Rowan, they have a win over DeSales, and they have a win over Wesleyan, who is maybe 7, maybe 8 in Region 1. So could be 2 or 3 regionally ranked wins for Swarthmore. Playing in the Centennial, I think they'll have chances for more. Muhlenberg's in that conference. They're probably regionally ranked. Johns Hopkins is in that conference. So if Swarthmore performs well, they could be adding to this list and adding to their resume. Number 2, I think, is Catholic. They haven't lost yet. They look really good. We'll see if they are top 25 this week. I haven't finished my ballot yet, so I don't know if I'll be voting for Catholic or not. I have not to this point, so that'll be an interesting thing for them. 506 strength of schedule against that 1,000 winning percentage. Not the best. That's kind of below what you'd like to see for Pool C, but as long as they keep that perfect record up, I don't think they'll have a problem in there. Maybe one regionally ranked win for Catholic, and that's a win over Scranton. Scranton's probably 6 or 7 in this region, so that's one regionally ranked win. I don't know if they have a bunch of opportunities for regionally ranked wins or not coming down the rest of their schedule, so we'll have to see where they end up. But I think they're outside of the hosting kind of range conversation at this point. And then third in the region, I have Muhlenberg from the Centennial just above Johns Hopkins, and that's largely because they have a head-to-head win. Muhlenberg does over Johns Hopkins, so I think that is going to maybe keep them above for right now, or at least how I see them. 667 winning percentage is pretty low for maybe a top 3 position, lower than you'd like to see, but that 632 strength of schedule is dynamite. And then that one regionally ranked win over Johns Hopkins. So depending on how they perform against Swarthmore and Hopkins down the road, you will see if Muhlenberg stays there, if they could, fight for maybe a top 2 spot in this region, or if they'll eventually cede ground to Johns Hopkins in the region.
A lot of opportunity for change here. You mentioned like a sub 700 winning percentage is controversial around selection time, regardless, and anywhere in a regional ranking. So to find them number 3 here probably is surprising to a lot of people. And if not for that head-to-head win, I think that you would be pretty quick to put Johns Hopkins in that number 3 spot. That head-to-head does say a lot. That 632 strength of schedule is an insane number.
Yeah.
And so with the head-to-head, the really strong strength of schedule at this point, you have to look past the sub 700 winning percentage. But this will be a very fluid situation throughout, the next 2 months, month and a half.
Yep, and those teams have a lot of games to play with each other. I'm talking here Swarthmore, Muhlenberg, and Johns Hopkins. So a lot of opportunity for movement. Going on to Region 6, the Old South region. This is kind of the Southeast, South Atlantic region. Number 1 in the region, Randolph-Macon. Ever heard of them? They're still kicking. They look like one of the best teams. They're in position to host. Right now, they're in position to be kind of a top 4 seed, so they could be a team that once again gets into the tournament, hosts all the way to Fort Wayne if they keep on winning. Put last year on repeat maybe, and right here for the Randolph-Macon Yellow Jackets. But strong numbers across the board: 929 winning percentage, 617 strength of schedule. I think there's 4 regionally ranked wins already for Randolph-Macon. That's 2 wins against Hampton-Sydney. That's a win against Guilford. And that's a win against Stockton. We already saw Stockton on top of their region, so that's a strong win. Like I said, likely host, almost a slam dunk host for early January. No one being a slam dunk for anything in Division III, but that looks very good for Randolph-Macon. Number 2, I come up with Emory. They have 2 regionally ranked wins Colby and Rochester. I think Rochester looks very strong. Colby is maybe a so-so regionally ranked win. But the 833 winning percentage, 629 SOS is very strong. Hosting is very likely. Could also end up in that top 4 conversation, but when you're running up with Emory and Randolph-Macon, the geography-wise is going to make it difficult for them both to be hosting, in that second weekend, Sweet 16 kind of time. So really going to be a big fight here for number 1. Randolph-Macon looks like they have dibs on that spot right now. Emory coming in at number 2. And third, I think Christopher Newport checks in third. 857 winning percentage, 540 SOS. I think 3 regionally ranked wins. I come up with Johns Hopkins, Brandeis, and Elmhurst. All look pretty good. Just off this list in 4th would be Mary Washington. Mary Washington does have that big win over Randolph-Macon, but I think that's not enough to jump over these teams here. And I think Christopher Newport beat Mary Washington, if I have that correctly off the top of my head. That was not in my notes. But Christopher Newport is also maybe on the fringes of hosting here as well. So we could be maybe talking 3 hosts from this region if the geography works out. We'll have to see how that goes. But 3 teams that are all in good, strong position for either their Pool A bids or Pool C bids after that. This is going to look like a very strong region when we're talking about even the top 7. So the top 3 here are going to be almost as strong as anyone in the country.
Yeah, really impressive to see Randolph-Macon's spot here after the first week or 2 of the season. And when they came in ranked number 1 as they deserved, coming off the championship with all they had coming back, but they really looked shaky the first couple of weeks. And to see them here, even by early January, to have really righted the ship, and you look across that resume, and there's margin for error across the board, really.
Oh yeah,
it's amazing to see. I mean, hey, no surprise. They have good players. They have a proven program, great coaching staff. I mean, it's not surprising, but it's really one of the interesting stories so far this season. And yeah, we'll see what happens, because the ODAC has proven itself to be one of the great leagues this year. But hey, they're starting off with a great strength of schedule that doesn't figure to take a big hit. And even if it did take a little bit of a hit, they're already sitting here above 600. So there's plenty of room for that to fall and still look really good. The 929, they can take a couple more losses and still be above that 800. They've already got RROs in their pocket. It's after that, maybe the first 2 weeks of the season, I'm not sure many would have believed that they would be, maybe there wasn't doubt that they would eventually find their footing and get right. But to look how they look right now is really impressive.
Yeah. We didn't talk efficiency ratings, but they've been fighting with St. Joseph, Connecticut for the number 1 spot in the ratings for the last few days. Seems like a team, one of them has an impressive win and then jumps the other one. They've been back and forth. And to point out, my ratings don't have any preseason expectations built in. So this isn't Randolph-Macon with any Buzz Anthony of the last few years. This is these guys on the court right now, still maybe fighting for that spot as being the best team in Division III. So Randolph-Macon is just fine. And you don't want to talk about locks in Division III, especially not in maybe what is still early January, but they're about as big of a lock right now as anyone. All right, moving ahead to Region 7. This is our region, Zach. This is the old Great Lakes region. So here's the top 3 in Region 7. I have Mount Union, then John Carroll, then Worcester. Mount Union looking very strong here with a 923 winning percentage of 589 SOS. I think they're in a position to host for sure. They could be in a conversation for a top 4 spot as well. I see 3 regionally ranked wins for Mount Union. That was a win over Worcester. That was a win over John Carroll. And that was a win over Whitworth. So really strong resume for Mount Union, but also owning wins over the next 2 teams on this list is going to be very strong for them. They're not going to give up that top spot easily. So we'll have to see what happens in OAC play, but Mount Union looks very strong. John Carroll next, they own a win over Wheaton, Illinois, and we're going to see them in the very next slide. And they own a win over Heidelberg, who's not on the Region 7 list here, but would be in the top 7 of Region 7. And I think John Carroll also has hosting possibilities as well. Next up being Worcester, 769 winning percentage, 616 SOS. I see 2 regionally ranked wins there for Worcester. They have beaten Calvin on a neutral court, and they've beaten Heidelberg. And I think even we could look at Worcester as a possible host as well out of Region 7, obviously depending on geography and the like. But this looks like a strong region. It's going to be very difficult to get into this region. It's the largest region in Division 3. So the limit of 7 ranked teams per region is really going to put a hamper here, as there's going to be a very good team who is not ranked, somewhere along the line. And I think, if you're looking for a fourth team in this region, that would be next on the list. I think you'd come up with Trine out of the MIAA. Their SOS is a little bit lower than you would like, but they have a very strong winning percentage, 923. So they might be checking in just below Worcester here as number 4.
Yeah, already some really important head-to-head wins in this region to help kind of shake it out, because I think as you're looking 1 through 7, this is probably going to be the toughest one to break into at that bottom 7. Other conferences, thin out a little bit even as you get to that, 5, 6, 7 range. This is definitely not one of them. Part of it is just there's more teams in the mix, like you mentioned, and it'll be interesting to see if anything changes here in the future, because this is one that probably should have had an 8th team ranking and could really benefit from it because the depth of quality is there.
Yeah, when they announced that there were going to be 7 teams ranked as the maximum, and if you do a calculation of percentage of teams ranked, you could add an 8th team to this region, and they would still have a lower than average percentage of their region ranked across the board. So it's going to be very tough. I realize I've been counting Calvin as a ranked win for a bunch of these teams. They might be right on that 7 line in this region right now, and they're a team that has at least one regionally ranked win. They have a 750 winning percentage and a 558 SOS according to my numbers here, but they might be 6, 7, or 8 out of the rankings right now. So it's going to be tough. There's going to be a team. It's going to be like Wabash or Calvin or Case Western Reserve. Someone like that is going to be Heidelberg is going to be out of the rankings here, and we're going to be like, what's the deal? This might be a fringe Pool C team even. But it's possible to not be regionally ranked and be selected into Pool C. That's definitely possible. But it hurts the resumes of the teams around you who maybe got a win against you, and that doesn't count as a regionally ranked win for them for this selection purposes. So very tight in Region 7. I will be complaining about that cap at 7 ranked teams until they finally change it. But I think it's really hurting Region 7 here. I think they either need to rebalance the regions so there's even numbers, or change that rule. Allow this region to have an 8th team. Don't just do a hard cap, change the percentage, something like that. But yeah, that could be something that comes into play here. Moving along to the Old Central region, Region 8. Here's a look at the top 3, and right now it's CCIW strong, which is kind of interesting because they don't have, maybe outside of Wheaton, a top tier team in the top 25 right now. But this whole region is going to be loaded with CCIW teams plus Wash U probably. But coming away, I think Wheaton definitely looks like the strongest team in the region right now. They have wins over Calvin, North Park, and Illinois Wesleyan. We just kind of mentioned that Calvin and Illinois Wesleyan are maybe kind of on that ranked 6, 7, or 8 out of the rankings line. So maybe those don't quite turn into regionally ranked wins. But being in the CCIW, Wheaton's going to have a lot of opportunity for more of those type games. I think they have a very good shot at hosting, although they don't look like a top 4 candidate to me right now. If they perform very well in the CCIW, they could maybe get into that type of a position. But I think a pod being hosted in Wheaton is not a crazy thing to say right now. Number 2, North Park. They've had a very impressive kind of start to the season here. 769 winning percentage, 553 SOS. I think 2 regionally ranked wins, Elmhurst and North Central. They've also beaten Loris, who I think is outside the regional rankings in Region 9, but that could turn into a regional ranked win as well. Probably not a host for North Park, but looking strong right now. Elmhurst 3rd. You could maybe make an argument that Wash U should be 3rd. I had Wash U 4th, but got to make decisions here. Right now, I think they have 2 regionally ranked wins, one over Wheaton, the top team of this region, and then Calvin. And right now, I think the reason I kept Wash U 4th is their SOS is just killing them. They've played mostly teams from the SLIAC in the non-conference, and I'm coming up with a 492 SOS. So even though they have an 833 winning percentage, which would compare very well to Elmhurst and their 667 winning percentage, I don't think that the committee would keep them right now with a maybe one regionally ranked win and that SOS. They're going to play in the UAA though. This is WashU I'm talking about. So an opportunity if they perform well to get lots of regionally ranked wins and an SOS boost. So they control their own destiny of sorts. If they perform well in the UAA, they will climb this list, and they could, I could see them finishing as high as second on this list, or maybe first, depending on what happens, in the CCIW and in UAA play. So I think, WashU just off this list at 4 is the way I see it.
Yeah, as I look at the data, I was just looking at the fuller picture of Region 8 that you have published on the site, and it really is shaping up for the official rankings to be CCIW and WashU. Now, my feeling is probably by the time we get to that point, whoever the leader in the NACC is at that time will probably be getting slotted in there, because you get into some really, you go down 5-6 deep in the CCIW, and there's going to be warts in that resume. But right now, the warts don't look as big as they do even for the leaders in the NACC or the HCAC.
Yeah.
So you figure someone's going to rise in each of those conferences that will probably sneak in there, because I have a hard time seeing a regional ranking come out that has 5 or 6 teams from one conference. Even though, as we're sitting right here where the data is, that it's probably totally deserved. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah.
At some point, I think the committee will have to determine that a certain winning percentage or strength of schedule is just disqualifying, and then work with what they have around that.
Right. Yeah. So I've been talking about Illinois Wesleyan maybe being the 7th ranked team in this region right now. Their winning percentage is only 500, but they have a 627 strength of schedule. Compare that to maybe Concordia Chicago, who has an 800 winning percentage, but a strength of schedule of 442. So it seems like both of those teams have a disqualifying number. Like, can you rank a team that's only 500? But can you also rank a team that has a strength of schedule below 450 that, their winning percentage is quote unquote only 800 as well? So, like you said, from the Northern Athletics Conference, from the Heartland Collegiate Conference, there's not a lot of teams that have winning percentages above 600 and strength of schedules much above 500. So once you go to like the 6th, 7th spot in this region, you're going to be choosing between numbers that look very questionable. And they're going to have to make decisions at some point. So, a team like Illinois Wesleyan, can they keep their head above water in the CCIW, or are injuries going to mount? They're going to lose more games than they want to, and they're going to, fall below 500 maybe overall. That's a tough conference. It's hard to win games in that conference. So even though like a finisher in the CCIW that was 500 in conference would be a strong team, it's not really going to add to their resume. So these are the questions that are going to have to be solved later on. And I know, again, early January is way too early to be doing this with any amount of seriousness or rigor. But these are going to be the types of conversations that we're going to have throughout the season, and that the committee is going to eventually have to make at the end of the year.
And just for comparison's sake, we'll put it out there. In the HCAC, you're looking at Hanover Anderson with 615 winning percentages and strength of schedules. These two teams have identical resumes. Strength of schedules of 499.
Yeah.
So really far below that, kind of 700 winning percentage that typically we like to say that's kind of like the baseline minimum. And then both just that fractional point below even the 500 SOS. So that's where you come out where, hey, we're looking at, 5-6 teams out of the CCIW dominating this conference.
Yeah.
And dominating this region.
And if that's how it ends up in the rankings, then they're going to load up on regionally ranked wins, just because every game just about is a regionally ranked game. So we could see some weird numbers. It'll be very interesting to see how this region plays out. I don't think we're going to solve it today, but one thing to definitely watch over the next month or so is how Region 8 shapes up, and particularly, I guess you just have to watch the CCIW standings to see how that one's going to play out. And Region 9, the Old West region, now it's kind of the maybe upper Midwest, kind of the Wisconsin, Minnesota general area. This one is a complete mess in my mind. I don't know. It just seems like the region doesn't make sense as far as kind of what's going on. It's another situation where you have, I guess we'll just go down the list. So top UW Lacrosse, I think they're a fine number one. 800 winning percentage, 551 strength of schedule, 3 regionally ranked wins probably. Let me get those for you. I think it's St. John's, Guilford, and UW Eau Claire. Good resume. Good job, UW Lacrosse. St. John's for number 2 in the region. Now we're starting to look at a 667 winning percentage. It's a little bit low for number 2, but a 571 strength of schedule is good. I think they have a regionally ranked win that's over UW Eau Claire, so that is good. But at this point, only one regionally ranked win. They'll have to add to that as the season goes on to be a strong Pool C contender or Region 9 rankings contender as we go. And then third here, UW Eau Claire, 733, 561, one regionally ranked win, and that's over UW Oshkosh. I think ordinarily I would have put Eau Claire above St. John's, but the head-to-head win for St. John's is going to keep them above right here. But the reason I say this region is a mess is outside of lacrosse, there's not a lot of regionally ranked wins, except for the team with maybe the most impressive ones is St. Mary's, Minnesota, who's beaten a bunch of these teams. Let me get those numbers here. Yeah, they've beaten St. John's. They've beaten UW Lacrosse. But otherwise, their resume is not great. They only have a 583 winning percentage and 562 strength of schedule, but there's a lot of good strength of schedules in this region with all these WIAC teams and other MIAC teams. So I couldn't justify putting St. Mary's up to number 2 maybe with some of those kind of head-to-head and regional wins. But they kind of seem like maybe they should go in that position. And then you also have to talk about teams in the such as Illinois College from the Midwest Conference, a 933 winning percentage, but a strength of schedule that's 490. So just on the wrong side of 500, probably no regionally ranked wins. So where do they slot in? Do they slot in still below, St. John's or UW Eau Claire? It's really hard to know how the committee is going to kind of value those kind of things. You can see them maybe just discarding teams that are below 500 until they have a necessity to revisit those teams. Bethany Lutheran is maybe similar, but not quite as extreme. 846 winning percentage and a 508 strength of schedule. And I don't know that they have a regionally ranked win either. So there's just a lot of things at play. It's just another region where you have these strength of schedules versus these winning percentage. And it's really hard to kind of slot them in where they need to go without saying, hey, we're just going to go completely one way or the other. I think when I was putting together this list, I really leaned on the regionally ranked wins, and teams that had those, I kind of ended up pushing a little higher than teams that didn't. But a team like Illinois College, I don't know if they're second in this region, and I don't know if they're seventh in this region. It's going to be a very interesting thing to watch as the season goes on. The WIAC is beating itself up, and it looks like it's going to be. We know it's a difficult conference every year, but I don't think there's a team that's going to be able to skate through that conference with only 1 or 2 or even 3 losses maybe. So the winning percentages are going to be very suspect, I think, from the stronger teams or the stronger conferences in this region, like the WIAC and the MIAC. So are we going to see a team from the Midwest Conference or the UMAC sneak into these rankings, or are they just going to be cut off because of the low winning percentages? I don't know.
Yeah, and I think as we've talked about in previous episodes, I don't think we're down on the WIAC as a whole, given the depth of the league. But this exercise would have been a whole lot easier if you had those top 2 or 3 teams really showing themselves to be the top 2 or 3 teams. Right now, there's, I don't know, 5, 6 teams, and they're all kind of, samey. You don't even lacrosse showing up number 1 here in terms of top 25 voting. They haven't had that staying power to be one of those consistent top 5 teams that look like they might after they put together probably the most impressive first week of anyone in the season. Now they're coming out, they're looking fine here. There's nothing wrong, but I mean, we haven't mentioned Oshkosh. Coming into the year, it was looking like lacrosse and Oshkosh. They're not even here, as they've had issues at different times throughout the season, kind of a different situation than Randolph-Macon, who stumbled a little bit early, but has put it all together and they've been fine. So you mentioned St. Mary's, so that'd be probably a team to watch who could really
Yeah.
push into this picture with the kind of wins they've showed that they're capable of. To see now as they kind of go through conference play, can they put those wins together to improve that winning percentage to put themselves in the picture because they have a pretty good basis for their strength of schedule and already those wins. So if they can put some wins together to boost that winning percentage, they're suddenly going to start looking really competitive in kind of the middle to pushing into the top part of this region. Um, Maybe on the more disappointing side would be the American Rivers Conference
Yeah.
here in this region. As I'm looking through the list, there's a lot of sub 500 strength of schedules right now, and at this point of the year, getting into conference play where everything kind of gets dragged to 500, it's
Yeah.
if you have a poor strength of schedule right now, you really don't have the chance to improve it. Not that everything's locked in, but everyone, in conference play, your schedule's taking a loss and a win at the same time. So it's ever pulling everything towards the middle there. So yeah, look at a team like, I don't know, maybe Loris can go on a winning streak and they've got as we sit here today, a 520 SOS. So they're a little bit on the right side. So if they can bump that winning percentage closer to 800, maybe they start looking a little bit more competitive. I don't know if it would ever be enough to push into the top three here, but yeah, just another really not quite the same dynamic we saw with the CCIW, but uh, maybe that's to the extreme, but some similar dynamics in play here in the region as there's just not anyone separating themselves to the top, and then that depth behind is really kind of questionable. It's hard to see who's going to be making that push just based on where the numbers are right now and what you can expect to happen going forward.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right that you would have to expect, a team or two in the American Rivers to make a push here. The difficulty I think for that conference is going to be, I see it as such a balanced conference that I don't know that one or two teams is going to put together a strong run to just kind of clear out the rest of the other teams in that conference and put themselves above the rest. If they take too many losses, there, like you said, there's not a lot of strength of schedules there to lean on. So someone's going to have to, almost run the table, not quite, but kind of put together that type of conference season to get themselves into that kind of top half of this region, or even solidly in the rankings at all. And I don't know that that's going to happen in a region, in a conference that I see as being so balanced where every game's a battle, as far as teams being equals in strength, and teams just going to take losses because of the nature of the conference play. All right. Our last region here is Region 10. This is the island region. So we're talking Pacific Northwest and Texas, the two kind of areas that don't have a lot of cross play elsewhere in the country naturally. So the way I see it is St. Thomas, Texas, number one, an 846 winning percentage, 591 strength of schedule. Looks very strong there. I think I see two regionally ranked wins for them, and that's East Texas Baptist and Claremont Mud Scripps. And I think right now, St. Thomas, Texas is looking good to host. The next spot, East Texas Baptist, 857 and a 506 strength of schedule. So strength of schedule starting to get a little bit low here. Two ranked wins for East Texas Baptist. So one over Mary Hardin Baylor and one over Redlands. I don't think they're in position to host right now, mostly looking at that SOS. I think that'd be too low to put them in kind of that top 16 mix. And then third, I came up with Claremont Mud Scripps. It could get really interesting here, kind of when you're talking about like the 3, 4, 5, 6 spots in this region. Claremont Mud Scripps out of the Skyac in Southern California, 833 winning percentage, 513 strength of schedule. Only one regionally ranked win, I think, is over Mary Hardin Baylor, but coming up with 3. If you looked for the next few teams, I think it's either Redlands or Mary Hardin Baylor, and then you start playing the like head-to-head win game. So Redlands Mary Hardin Baylor beat Redlands, but Claremont Mud Scripps beat Mary Hardin Baylor. So it gets kind of mixed up there as far as who you could slot in above, other teams based on head-to-head results and the like. And it's also an interesting kind of comparison between winning percentages. I think the Southern California teams have better, I guess Claremont Mud Scripps at least has a better winning percentage than, say, does Mary Hardin Baylor, who's a 714 right now. But then you're talking about a 513 SOS for Claremont Mud Scripps versus a 577 strength of schedule for Mary Hardin Baylor. So you'd have to, play that juggle game. between those two teams, the head-to-head win going to Claremont Mudscripts, I think at this point is big. That was opening night, if I recall, or opening week for sure. So that's goes to say that those November games can play a big role down the line when we're looking at regional rankings and the like. But I think this is where we would put things. Pomona Pitzer might also be in the mix as well. They have a 590 SOS, which is one of the better marks in this region, a 727 winning percentage. But I think they also have a loss head-to-head to a couple of these teams. Mary Hardin Baylor, if I recall, and also Redlands maybe. So, would they be able to stay above those teams or below those teams? I think they would maybe slot below both of those and maybe be like sixth in this region. But if you really wanted to make an argument for Pomona Pitzer, being in that mix for number 3, sure, let's have it. But yeah, very interesting. Maybe mid tier in this region as far as what's going to happen here, 3, 4, 5 between some of these teams. But that's what it looks like in Region 10, Zach.
Yeah. Longtime observers of the West probably take note that there's no Northwest Conference team here, but probably at where we stand now, Whitman might be kind of in that mix for you in that just off the screen area. We'll see what happens. Whitworth has a really good strength of schedule currently. So that's a good basis for them. We'll see if they can put enough wins together during conference play for that to really help them. But the NWC is usually a big player in this Region 10 West region, and so yeah, you didn't mention them, but there are a couple contenders who are maybe just off the screen in terms of this top 3 outlook.
Yeah, I agree. I should maybe say I think this is the tightest region in terms of 2 through maybe 8. You're looking at East Texas Baptist, Claremont Mudscripts, Mary Hardin Baylor, Whitman, Pomona Pitzer, Whitworth, Redlands. I think I named everyone, but all of those teams, you could almost pick names out of a hat as far as who slots in. I think one of those teams is going to end up as high as number 2, and one of those teams might end up just on the outside of the regional rankings. It's going to be a lot. There's a lot to play for here between the SCIAC, the Northwest Conference, the Texas teams. It's going to be an interesting region, and it always is just the nature of the region. I think I didn't even call it out correctly. Yeah, it's Pacific Northwest, it's Southern California, and it's Texas. A lot of good teams here. Maybe not very many besides St. Thomas, Texas, in the hosting mix. I think all the rest are outside. If someone makes a run out of the SCIAC or out of the ASC from here on out, maybe they get themselves into that hosting mix. But I think right now we're maybe only getting one Region 10 host, which is fairly normal based on geography and money and the like. But I think that's going to be kind of how this region shapes up this year too.
Yep. And also can mention Puget Sound just as another contender there in the Northwest Conference, that if you just kind of look at their winning percentage, strength of schedule in a vacuum, they pass the sniff test. So I would say they're another team that's in position here to watch. They have plenty to play for here into the national picture. Just with let's see, they have 778 winning percentage and 529 strength of schedule. So again, it's not, neither number is tremendous, but they're kind of those numbers that you say are good enough in its own. So we'll see what happens as it plays out.
For sure. All right. Well, that wraps up the regions. We will move along to the pick slate. I will run through this fairly quick. This is
good.
last.
Yeah, as fast as possible, please. We don't need to dwell on much of it at all.
Okay. Zach did very poorly this week. NYU was 11-point favorites against Hanover. They won by 18. I get that one. Western New England was 1-point underdogs at Nichols. They won by 14. Neither of us got that one. North Park was 3.5-point underdogs at Wheaton. We both picked Wheaton. Wheaton won by 5. We both get it. Rochester was 6-point dogs at Emory. Emory won that game by, I believe that says 11, if I can do math. And we both missed that one. The game of the week was Guilford at Randolph-Macon. The line was +7. I took Guilford. You took Randolph-Macon. It was a 3-point ball game, so I get that one. Moving on to the leaderboard, Zach, you were only 1-4 last week. That takes you to 19-21 on the season. I was 3-2, and I'm 26-14, pulling together a rather commanding lead at this point. That is a week and a half lead going into, week 10? Something like that. So on to this week's picks. Here are our games. First game is Whitworth +2 at Whitman on January 10. Zach, your pick.
I am going to go with Whitworth here. I am 1-1 picking Whitworth so far this year. This is a coin flip game for me. It's interesting. We mentioned these two teams as we were talking about Region 10, and as we record here, these two rivals sit directly next to each other in the Massey ratings. So real coin flip game. So I'll take the 2 points and give Whitworth the opportunity to get me over 500 picking them this year.
I'm going to go the other way for drama. I'm going to pick Whitman. I'm going to take the 2 points. I know these teams are tight in the ratings. So +2, I think Whitman will be able to cover that one and win by 3 or more. The next game, the big Slyack rivalry. I don't know if it's a rivalry or not. Spalding +8 at Fontbonne.
I am going to pick Fontbonne in this one. Both teams took their lumps early in the season, but Fontbonne has picked up some wins of late, even though they actually spent most of December playing outside of D3. So I'm not quite sure what to do with that, but I feel like no matter who you're playing, you're picking up wins, you're feeling good, building confidence, some positivity. Fontbonne usually is one of the better Slayak teams, so I will go ahead and lay the 8.
I will take Spalding. I think 8 is going to be too big on this one. I think it's going to be a tighter game. And I think Fontbonne wins, but I'm going to take Spalding to cover. Game number 3, Texas-Dallas, 7.5-point underdogs at East Texas Baptist.
Yeah, this is one that I don't think I would really be surprised either way at who won. So I will take the 7.5 points in my pocket and hope for a close game. Texas Dallas.
Texas-Dallas. It took me like a few minutes to understand all that. Yes, I'm going to take East Texas Baptist. I think 7.5 is a large number, but I think home court's going to matter here in Texas, and I think East Texas Baptist can cover this spread. Next up is the big rivalry, Goucher versus Catholic. It's a huge number, +30. Goucher +30 at Catholic. Zach, who do you want to pick in this game? And remember, this determines who do you like better, Dave McHugh or Pat Coleman.
Yeah, this is the Dave McHugh versus Pat Coleman Bowl. So Goucher struggled this year, as they typically do, unfortunately. But Goucher's only lost 2 games by 30 plus, and both of them were against Division I opponents.
Okay.
So now here, I did look back at this. Catholic did actually win both meetings last year by more than 30. I thought about, well, and I got burned by a big number earlier in the year when we had Hunter against NYU. I thought about laying the 30, but in the end, Goucher has been slightly more competitive. Now, I don't think they've played a team as good as Catholic outside of those 2 Division I teams that they played that did beat them by 30 or more. But man, that's a big number. I will take the points.
Taking the points for Zach. I'm also going to take the points. I really considered taking Catholic like I did NYU over Hunter. I think that was that line 40 maybe. It was big. Catholic's got top 25 dreams right now. They're a good team. I don't think Goucher is a good team at this point. So maybe 30 is not unreasonable. Obviously, the computer says it's 30, so it's not unreasonable. But it's a big line. I agree. I just would have a hard time picking the to cover the 30. So I'll go with Goucher here, and they're gonna keep it close. They're gonna keep it within 9 possessions.
27.
9 possessions. Yeah. And then our D3 Datacast game of the week. Oh, go ahead.
Was there any doubt what the game of the week would be?
No,
this week?
Obviously, it's the D3 Datacast. It's the first Calvin and Hope game since the D3 Datacast has come on the air. We got to make it the game of the week. It should be the game of the year for everyone. Calvin is going to Hope, but Calvin is the 2.5-point road favorites by the computer. Go ahead, Zach.
You know how I love to pick games. I've said it on the show before. I love a home underdog, and I I love picking against my rooting interest so that I'm never I'm either right or I'm happy with a win. So I will pick Hope plus the 3.5 and hope for a Kelvin win by 1, 2, or 3. The
I don't
double
know.
win.
I don't know if you saw, but there was a job posting that just went up for the next co-host of the D3 Datacast because Zach is off the team.
No, I have 3 points to work with where Kelvin can win the game and I can still win the pick.
I don't care. I'm going Calvin. Calvin's going to cover the 2.5. They're going to win this game by 3 or more. No question in my mind. Easy call. Let's move it on.
Wait, what does Ken Massey say about this game? You'd think I would know this already, but
I don't know.
73-71 most likely for Kelvin. So
So
look,
2-point.
I'm just agreeing with Ken Massey, who agrees that Kelvin will beat Hope.
Yeah. It won't be that close. All right, we're moving
That's
on.
fine.
Upset watch.
Again, hey, perfectly fine with me. I am happy to take the L here every single time.
Upset watch.
Upset watch.
St. Thomas. We are now not calling them St. Thomas, Texas anymore. We're just going to call them St. Thomas. They are at Centenary on January 10. Centenary. I don't know how to say it. So we're putting St. Thomas on upset watch. I think St. Thomas will still be ranked. They took a loss this week, I think, but they had some buffer there. So a ranked versus unranked game here. I think it's going to be a tough one. Expect St. Thomas to win this game, but it could be close. It could be a possession or so. I think my computer says 3.5 points to St. Thomas on this one. But one to keep an eye out for D3 fans here this week. Moving on, I think that brings us to the mailbag. Zach, do you have the first mailbag question for us? I'm actually going to bring you back on screen now. Unfire you. Okay, there you go.
Yes, the first mailbag question. This one came to us via Facebook. You can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/D3Datacast, and the user wished to remain anonymous, so we will honor that. The question is, when looking at teams with a common opponent, why does one team get a pass and another team gets no rise in profile? My example is Middlebury played Rochester and lost. It did not seem to hurt Middlebury's standing or rankings. Meanwhile, Hobart played Rochester and won and did not seem to get much of a boost from it at all. I'm sure that there are many other examples.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things going on here. Yeah, and I'm not completely in the state of mind to remember exactly where we were in November when Hobart beat Rochester, and then early December when Middlebury lost to Rochester. But both of these were close games.
I can reset that for us a little bit.
Yeah, go for it.
So Hobart entered the game 3-2. They had losses to Oswego State and Brockport State, and then Middlebury entered their game with Rochester 5-0. I know that you were a little bit dubious on Middlebury, but they were 5-0, and then lost by 2 at Rochester.
Yeah, so one team already took a couple losses, and one team came in undefeated. I think the other part of this was Rochester lost at Hobart, so that was a home game for Hobart, and it was a 1-point game. Middlebury lost at Rochester by 2. So there was a difference in location. And to me, when you talk about a 1 or a 2-point game, home versus road can matter quite a bit in that. If you lose on the road by 2, to me, that doesn't suggest that you're necessarily worse than the team you played, or it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to move up or down depending on how close the teams are. But, Middlebury losing by 2 at Rochester, if Rochester was, I don't know where they were in the rankings, but somewhere between 5 and 10 probably, and Middlebury was like in the middle of the poll, that wouldn't suggest to me that you would need to move Middlebury based on that. The Hobart beating Rochester, that would be a point in their favor. I would, as a voter, I would definitely look that as an impressive win on Hobart's resume. But if they already had 2 losses on the books and some other results that maybe weren't going to put them in contention for a top 25 for me, then beating Rochester wouldn't automatically vault them into that position. So I don't know if that completely answers the question, but that's kind of how I see the different dynamics playing out.
Yeah, and as we've seen with having some fun with the transitive path, that's a terrible way to rank teams. So I'm trying to look just at what else Middlebury. I know they were 5-0. Okay, so they had a win over Carnegie Mellon the day before losing at Rochester. That
Yeah.
was on the neutral court at Rochester. They had also beaten Nichols early in the year, so maybe not quite wins in their favor that were losses to in against Hobart. There's probably not quite equal teams to you know Oswego State and Brockport State on the whole that Hobart had lost. But I think you have to look at it as each game helps inform a total opinion. And yeah, you give Hobart credit for beating Rochester, but in the totality of the situation, you can't look at a single result and just decide to wipe away everything else, especially when, Middlebury hadn't lost yet and they were viewed as a top 25 team by the whole of the voters as the points came out. I know you were waiting to see a little bit more out of Middlebury to be a believer in them, but again, like going up against a team like Rochester and then losing by 2 says, yeah, okay, they're what we thought, or they're good. And you could say that, hey, maybe Hobart's good because they beat Rochester, and then you say, okay, well, what else did they did? Well, they lost to Oswego State, they lost to Brockport State. Not, now neither of those losses were bad losses, um, but you just have to use all the information available to form the total opinion.
Yep. All right. Our next mailbag question. Zach, do you have this one?
Yes, this one also wished to remain anonymous, but this came in on Twitter, where you can follow us at D3 Datacast. And it says, how do you assess parity this season and the loss of 7 regional ranked teams to the general sense of the D3 Hoops men's basketball community that it's only going to take 2 to 4 regional ranked wins to get into the tournament this season versus 5 to 7 last season? What's making the difference? More parity or 7 less ranked teams, or some of both? So Matt, just to kind of help clarify the question here I think. So last year, as we were kind of going through Pool C projections, and we were looking at a lot of the teams had 5 or more wins against regionally ranked opponents. Now this year, there seems to be a general sense on people who are discussing hashtag D3 hoops on Twitter and elsewhere that it's going to be more, that number is going to look more like 2 to 4. So I think the question is getting at, is that a result of there just being fewer regionally ranked teams based on the difference we noted capped at 7 versus last year where there was a total of 84? Was it greater than that? Regionally ranked teams? Or is it just because there's more parity and so you might have teams that are outside the regional rankings that are just as good or viable or competitive than typically there is?
I think specifically when it comes to RROs, we're going to see a big difference in the number of regionally ranked teams. So this year we mentioned they're capping it at 7, and all regions are 7 except for Region 2 has 6. Last year, most of the regions had 7, 8, 9, 10 teams ranked. They ranked up to 20% of the region. So we lost a whole bunch of regionally ranked teams. So I think that's going to be the biggest thing we see in that number. Last year, if you didn't have 4 or more, you were probably considered low on that number. This year, 1 will be low, but I think 2 is going to end up seeming just fine. And more than 3, like 4 or more, is going to seem like really high number. So I think that's going to be a big difference in the criteria this year. I think when it comes to the winning percentage and the strength of schedule, I think we'll see more parity and balance than we saw last year. We'll have to see if that plays out. But some of the regions we were talking about, that Region 10, Region 9, I think there was a region earlier on as well, that there's just more of a muddle of teams as far as where the winning percentages aren't super high because they have good strength of schedules and whatnot. So I think there's several things at play. I think one, anecdotally, I think teams that have scheduled stronger this year than I've seen in a while. So I think there's going to be a lot of high strength of schedules. I think the winning percentages are going to maybe be somewhat lower than we've seen for some of these teams because of parity, because of the difficult schedules. And then I think we'll see a difference in the regionally ranked wins, and that's mostly going to be because of the rebalancing of the regions or the capping of the regionally ranked teams at 7.
Yeah, it strikes me that actually parity may be a driving factor to increase a number of regionally ranked wins, right? If you've got a team who's blowing through at the top of the region and they're not losing any games, that's a regionally ranked team that no one is picking up a regionally
Yeah.
ranked win against, right? So the more losses these teams are taking that are still getting ranked, the more
Mm-hmm.
regionally ranked wins are going to be out there. Now the other thing here is I think we've heard it said. I think Sarah Quattrocki has specifically said it. Maybe Mike Schauer specifically said it that last year they were just ranking too many teams.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting down at the bottom of the regional rankings, teams that were very marginal, that didn't really deserve to be regionally ranked, and but they were because hey, we need to rank 10 teams, 9 teams, whatever it was. So in a way, I guess you could say, is it good or bad that there's going to be fewer regionally ranked wins maybe this year? But I think it ultimately makes the committee's job a little bit easier
Yeah.
because since they will be more limited, those what would have been regionally ranked wins against the ninth team in a region just won't even be there at all. So I think they'll have to do a little bit less parsing of the data to try to look into those regionally ranked wins to see which ones were against top teams or bottom teams. This will allow them to take it a little bit more at face value than trying to really dig into it and see what it means. So we'll see how that plays out. Hopefully that works out to their benefit where they're spending more time on things that matter and less time in ranking, you know, 7, 8, ninth team in a region and trying to dig into data to make sense of it. Hopefully they have numbers on a screen that make sense, that they can more or less take at face value and then decide internally how they want to weight each one.
Yeah, and they had said, Mike Schauer had said this. They were spending too much time, the last few teams in a region, that they knew weren't going to be Pool C teams, but it was important for that regionally ranked opponent data that they had to do a good job of it. It makes sense to cut that down. Last year, we saw any team that had a reasonable resume essentially was regionally ranked. This year, we're talking about in Region 7 and maybe Region 10, there are going to be good teams with good resumes that are not going to be regionally ranked. So I think you pretty much know, you know, differences in region quality aside, you pretty much know if a team has a regionally ranked win that was against a team that has a reasonable resume, a kind of Pool C-ish viable resume. And last year we didn't know that for sure. So I think they really had to do a lot of job looking inside that data to say were these wins against the top 1, 2, or 3 teams in that region. I think they're still going to do that this year, but it's going to be a little bit less important to kind of weed out some of those worse regionally ranked wins than last year.
All right, we have one more mailbag question that also came from a anonymous follower on Twitter. This one's asking about Roanoke, who is 5-2 against the Massey top 100, if I look correctly. And yes, user, you did look correctly. I verified that. What is the record of teams number 25 or 20 to 25 in the top 25? So obviously someone very interested in Roanoke here. Roanoke has had a good season. They've been in that others receiving votes category. And so just kind of wanting to look an inside look into some of the numbers to see how they stack up with the teams who are being voted into the bottom of the top 25. So as noted, the 5-2 is correct for Roanoke against the Massey top 100. Currently, we expect a new top 25 Monday evening. So this episode will get published Monday morning. So as we're looking at it, we're going based on current as of the recording date, top 25. 20th is Nazareth. They're 2-1 against the Massey top 100. Mary Washington is 21st and are 4-3 against the top 100. Emory is 3-2. Calvin is 2-3. Guilford is 2-3, and Trine is 2-1. Now, like we talked about with the uh, results against regionally ranked opponents, they're not, all those are not equal. A Massey top 100 win is not equal necessarily, but just kind of top view. Roanoke looks very competitive against sort of the bottom fifth of the top 25. Now, Matt, as a top 25 voter, what's your view on Roanoke? How are you handling them? Just in the context, I know that you've had a lot of teams that you've looked, and the bottom of the top 25 has been very fluid in general, and for each, it seems, individual top 25 voter.
Yeah, I've voted for Roanoke for I believe 2 ballots now in a row. I have not finished my ballot for this week. We're recording a little bit earlier on Sunday than we typically do, so that's why we didn't go over my ballot either. So I have not finished it, but I do anticipate I'll probably have them in a similar spot, kind of 23, 24, 25 range. I think. I again have not done much work on my ballot at all yet, so maybe I won't end up voting for them. I probably will have my ballot posted on Twitter Monday, maybe by the time this episode is released, so everyone can see how I voted them. But I've seen them in that range. I think they're good. I think, yeah, they're 5-2 against the Massey top 100. But if memory serves, I think most of those are in 50 to 100 range for Massey, except for NYU. Oh no, they lost to NYU, right? So yeah, there's some of those teams that are listed above, which have, I guess, worse records against the Massey top 100, might have better wins. You know, Calvin only has 2 wins against the Massey top 100. One of them is UW Oshkosh, which I think is a quote unquote better win than Roanoke has. Let me just check all of that information to make sure it's correct.
So Roanoke, just while you're looking up the Roanoke side of things, is neutral court win over Whitworth, who is 57 currently in Massey. Salisbury 93 at Washington and Lee 60. Barry on the neutral court over one of those holiday afternoon games 61. Lost to NYU 33, and then just this past Saturday beat Virginia Wesleyan at Virginia Wesleyan, who is ranked 50 in Massey as we record.
So yeah, that number 50 win then was their best win against the Massey index. Um, Calvin's win against Oshkosh is who's currently number 19 in the Massey rating, so that's a better win than Roanoke has. Now, all of that these are just single data points that a voter has to go through. All of it. I don't vote strictly by any computer rating, not my own, not Massey. I do use them to inform my personal ballots. But I even though Calvin has a better win than Roanoke, the last ballot I had taken Calvin out and I had kept Roanoke in. So there's not one thing that's for me is going to launch a team above other teams. But that 5-2 mark is a strong mark, and I think that goes to show why some of these computer ratings value Roanoke maybe more than the human voters do, because human voters, I think, tend to latch on to things like really strong wins, quality wins. It's maybe harder to find. You have good wins on Roanoke's schedule, but maybe you have a more difficult time finding some of those top-notch wins that voters really like. But a computer kind of will take all of that information and put it together and say, yeah, Roanoke's number 20 or something like that. So
16.
Okay, 16 by that's what they are in Massey. So
Yes, yeah.
I do find that information valuable, that input valuable. So some teams, they can perform very well with good wins and maybe fewer great wins. So yeah.
And being in the ODAC, there is plenty of opportunity for Roanoke to notch some of those,
Yep.
what are maybe more signature wins coming up.
Guilford, Randolph Macon, et cetera,
Yep.
et cetera.
Absolutely. Hampton Sydney. Yep.
Hampton Sydney. Yep. All right. I think that is the end of the show. Zach, what do you say?
That is the conclusion of the mailbag and the show. The mailbag is always open. You can leave a comment on this episode on YouTube, and we'll pick it up for the next show. You can also, as we mentioned, submit questions via tweeting at us at D3Datacast. You can send it to the direct messages there. If you prefer to remain anonymous, you may do so. Just let us know, and we will honor that. Also on Facebook at facebook.com/D3Datacast, you can send us a message there. And we would love to have you, even if you're not submitting a question, we would just love to connect with you on any and all of those social media. And yeah, Matt, okay, we also should mention that we're planning to kick off a subscriber drive of sorts here on YouTube. So just so people know a little bit how it works when you're starting a YouTube channel, there's certain features and options that open up along the way as you prove your worth and your commitment to the platform. So some of those metrics are tied to the number of subscribers. So at this point, we don't have any ideas or any plans to have any ways to support the show that require anything monetarily of you. However, we appreciate if you've been enjoying the show, just to click the subscribe button. It's available on our channel page or any of our videos. Yeah, the more we can grow that number, the more things open up to us in the future. And yeah, we don't really like having to ask for that, but again, it is kind of an important metric. We don't want to just ask for it. We want to earn your click. So if you feel like we have enhanced your enjoyment of the Division III basketball scene, we ask that you consider clicking the subscribe button, and we greatly appreciate it.
And if we hit some of those round 100 number milestones before Selection Monday, so 200, 300, 400, who knows, then we want to set up a live stream, like a 1 hour live stream where y'all can watch and just tell us your favorite team, and we'll answer where we think they might sit in the regional rankings. What are their chances to host? What are their chances to be Pool C? Just talk about the teams that you want us to talk about and just kind of have a back and forth for an hour or so. So hopefully we can hit some of those numbers. So if you like the show, give it the thumbs up and give it the subscribe and let other people know that you like the D3 Datacast and that you love D3 Hoops.
As we record here, we're sitting on 147 subscribers, so hopefully we can add a few more and close in on that first milestone, 200. And like Matt mentioned, we'll come up with something fun to do to help celebrate it with you, celebrate together as a community. And yeah, and then we'll go from there, work towards 300.
Completely free. Just click subscribe. All right, that's all we have for today. Good job, team.
See you next week.